Hello everyone, I'm Dova, and today I'm be doing a comparison video between the Sakura White Gelly Roll pen and the Signo White Gelly Roll, or Signo White drawing pen. The more I drew, I decided that it would be the right time to try out one of those highlighting pens to have nicer details on finished drawings. And first I started using the white acrylic paints because that's the only thing I had. And eventually I decided to invest in one of these when I found them open stock at Michael's. The White Gelly Roll Sakura pen wasn't really, I mean, it was great for a while, but the more I used it on certain mediums, the less I was happy with the end results. That's why I decided to invest in the Signo White when I came across it in Kinokuniya. I've heard a lot of great things about this pen and the quality of it, so I can't wait to try it out and show you guys the differences between these two pens on the mediums that I use often. So let's see how they look like. First, I'm going to use this painting of Joy that I did a while back. And in this one, for the final details, I used the Sakura Gelly Roll. Now, this pen isn't terrible, but when I want really bright, kind of like in-your-face highlight, it doesn't show up as well. But like you see here, it comes out very subtle, and it's kind of like, it doesn't take away from the painting. That's why I also like these. But when it comes to details that I want to pop, like the shine on a yellow or on her dress, it doesn't really come out as nicely. So I'm hoping that maybe this might do otherwise, or this might actually show up a little bit better. So I'm gonna try it out real quick. So I don't know if you can actually tell the difference, but already you can see that this works very, very well with watercolor, and even light colors it comes out a little bit more. The thing that I might have to get used to is the fact that it's a little bit more watery, but the flow is pretty consistent. It's also really opaque, whereas this one sometimes gets a little bit transparent. Like down here, the white didn't actually show up as well. It kind of blended in with the yellow, but here, for when I use Signo, the white is that Signo? Yeah, the white stood out a little bit more than the Sakura when I first used it on this side of the dress. With watercolors on mixed media paper, this works very well. It's on the same level or a little bit better than the Sakura, but the difference isn't big enough to say which one is better or more favored. So I'm going to try on other mediums that I have, so be right back. Alright, so this is a watercolor painting that I did a while back, and for the highlighted details I used the Sakura White Gelly Roll. The highlights came out really nicely, so I can't really have any complaints on this, but when it came to doing like little star or little dot details on darker surfaces, it didn't really come out as obvious. So let me show you here. So the details didn't actually just come out as bright as the spots that I left, or that I covered over with masking fluid. So I'm going to try the Signo and see if it does a better or similar result. Alright, so the details didn't actually show up as much on this pen. It actually became way too transparent while the Signo stayed opaque. The common problem I had with the Gelly Roll is that if you try to layer another white mark on top of it, it scratches the bottom one off, which I really, really hate. But when you layer with this one, the consistency stays the same. It doesn't scratch the bottom layer. In fact, it makes like a more bold layer on top of the other until like it becomes a thicker line. And yeah, that's probably because it's like watery instead of maybe gel. I'm not too sure yet. So right now, Signo is looking a little bit better for me personally. So I'm gonna try out some of the highlights on this drawing and see if it'll look better than the ones I currently have in place. So be right back. Okay, so when it comes to bold highlights, I would totally go for this one, the Signo gel pen. But if you want subtle light or highlights that kind of blend in with the darker colors or your picture and overall, I would go for the Gelly Roll. Because this one makes really bold, bright, white highlights, and it makes it really stand out. So it's very beneficial if you want stronger highlights. Unlike this one, it just makes really subtle ones. So I'm going to test it out on my final drawing using the medium that I originally bought this for. So be right back. Alright, so this is my final illustration of the day. It's the Harley Quinn drawing that I did a while back. The paper that I'm using is the Strathmore Tone Tan, which works really great with highlighting pens if you want like simple pencil drawings and highlights on them. I used a brush-tipped pen and layers of Prismacolor pencils in here because the problem I had with this is that it doesn't layer as strongly on top of a waxy surface. In fact, it has a hard time sticking to it. So I'm going to try and see how much of a difference these two has. But first, I'm going to flip this drawing around and show you how strong they are on the Tone Tan paper. So be right back. Okay, so first we're going to use the Sakura Gelly Roll. I'm going to write this down here. It seems like it shows up on the camera, but in fact, when I look over it from here, it's very transparent and not that opaque. It's very subtle and it blends in nicely with the surface, but it doesn't really pop out at you. Unlike this one, I'm assuming it's going to be more bold and bright and very bright white. That kind of rhymed. So let me see this one. So this one actually shows up a lot brighter. Let's see if I could show you that one. Yeah. So this one actually shows up a lot more than the Sakura Gelly Roll. This is actually a lot brighter, more opaque, and it doesn't scratch off like here. I don't know if I showed that clearly. When you layer it on top of each other, it eventually scratches off, leaving those gaps that you don't really want if you were gonna like layer in colors. Unlike this one, oops, it just piles on the ink and it doesn't leave any scratch gaps in between. So far I'm really liking this pen a lot more than this one. But I wouldn't be too quick to get rid of this. It is very helpful when it comes to subtle, less obvious highlights. But I'm gonna try it on the medium that I use the most when it comes to layering on top of my watercolors. So anyways, without further ado, let's get started. So basically I'm just gonna highlight this using the Sakura pen first, and then I'm gonna highlight with this one and then show you the difference between each two. So be right back. Alright, so now I'm going to use the Gelly or the Signo pen and then show you guys the difference between the two afterwards. So be right back. Okay, so in this drawing it's a little difficult to tell the difference between the two since for some reason this started working. Before I actually had a hard time making sure that the white continues to come out, or that it would often scratch when I layer it on top of my Prismacolors. So I'm not really too sure what happened there. But when it comes to writing down, or the thing that I don't like about it is it stays consistent for a while. but then the longer I use it, or the quicker I use it, or when I use it in certain angles, the ink stops flowing, or it just doesn't come out as strongly. So I don't know, maybe I have a faulty pen, or I'm using it incorrectly, but it still gets frustrating when it stops working and you're not too sure if it's because of the pen itself or that because you're using it incorrectly. So it's trial and error. But what I can tell is that this works great. The flow continues to flow. It's very opaque. It stands out really, really, really great, but it's a little too watery, as you can see from here and a little bit here. And I'm a little scared that I might end up smudging it at one point. Look at that, I already got some on my hand. Maybe the flow is just too strong, or it's gonna take some getting used to, but I still like how strong this pen is compared to the Sakura Gelly Roll. There is no love or hate between these two pens. I love them both because, I don't know, they're really great. They haven't let me down as much. Well, this one let me down a lot, but maybe because I just bought a faulty pen, but it's still really, really good for highlights and really, really subtle highlights that doesn't stand out as strongly. But what I love about this is that the flow, like, I have a love-hate between the flow and this one. Like, sometimes it flows nicely, but then sometimes it flows too transparent, and then it still does that scratchy thing when you layer too much, or when you layer one on top of the other. Whereas this one, it kind of pools when you try to do a layer, and it comes out a little too watery, but I think it's just something I have to get used to. I wouldn't get rid of either. Like, I'm enjoying them both really, really well. But right now, Signo has my favorite, or has my favor because of how vibrant, well, not vibrant, how bright and opaque the white is compared to this one. So technically, it's like, it's an even match for me right now, especially since I'm just an amateur beginner artist and can't really tell the difference between the two right now. I still have a long ways to go, but I've been happy with how these two products have been going for me since I've bought and used them. I'll be using the Signo one more often so I can test it out on my future videos, and I'll still keep this guy and probably buy a different one in a closed container because this was open stock, so maybe someone accidentally like ruined it. So I might end up buying a closed stock and then giving it another go, and then I'll do another comparison video between these two maybe. I still really enjoyed how this came out, and I'm really loving having new mediums to try out. I'm really happy with both, and I know people favor the Signo, but for me right now it's a little iffy because of the watery texture. I'm going on my ramblings and I think I'm going in circles. So yeah, final verdict, this one wins for me right now, but I still love this one just as much. I guess there's no final verdict, but the more I continue to test this, the more I'll let you guys know which one is ultimately the better white pen that's useful for highlights. So, thank you so much for watching. I'll try to make sure I write like small scripts so I don't ramble on, and that my next reviews are a little bit more informative than this one was. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!